Good evening, all my friends in TV land. This is Senior Issues, etc., and I'm your host, Vita Verdon. And, you know, I always have your concerns at hand, and since this show is seen online all year round, but we are filming it just before the Christmas holiday season, the subject of our show tonight is going to be on nutrition. I think it's a very vitally important subject, and I have a woman here that's been on the show before, and I feel that she has very solid information for us, and she always has something of interest to break us into. And so I'd like to give a warm welcome to Joyce Miller, that is the nutritionist of the Winchester House, which is located here in Libertyville, Illinois, where we generally film around this area. And so we're going to see what she has to say on this subject. Joyce, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Vita.
To the show today. And so you know the lineup here. Everybody likes to know a little bit about you, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself right now?
Thank you. Well, I've been a Lake County resident for over 30 years, which is hard to believe. And when I first moved here, I worked at St. Therese Hospital, which of course now has merged with Vista. I was the chief dietitian at St. Therese, after which I spent a few years at the Veterans Administration in North Chicago, now the Jim Lovell Federal Center. And after that, I went to Winchester House in 1988. Winchester House is the long-term care facility that's owned and operated by Lake County.
Lake County, Illinois.
That's correct, and I've been there for the last 23 years.
Well, tell me, where were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and I went to school at Michigan State University.
Oh, you were born and raised in Detroit?
Yes, I was.
So then when did you move into Illinois?
Well, I had graduated from college, and I was looking for a job, and my sister, as a matter of fact, my sister Diane, who I love dearly, was living and working in Chicago. And she invited me for a weekend. I came, and I fell in love with Chicago and Illinois.
Were you married at that time?
No, I was single at that time.
Oh, so then you met your husband in Illinois?
I did. I met my husband in Illinois, up in Waukegan, and we married, and I have two lovely children.
And your husband was born in Waukegan?
Yes, he was.
He was born and raised in Waukegan?
Yes, he was.
Oh.
And so we have two children, and both are grown up now, so I have a lovely young man and a lovely young daughter.
And they are currently living in this area?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. My son lives in Waukegan, and my daughter is attending law school down at Loyola University of Law. This is her first semester. So.
Well, let's just start right at the basics. I like to bring basics to people, and then they could take off and go any direction that they want. Now, let's start with just the word nutrition. You know, because we get so many different versions of it. Let's talk with the basics. You are a nutritionist, all right? So what does the word nutrition mean, first of all, and what is a nutritionist? Let's start from there.
Okay, well, let's talk about nutrition.
Okay.
Nutrition is the science of learning about food, and particularly the chemicals, the natural chemicals that make up the food we eat, and how they affect the human body, either in growing or in different processes. And so that is basically the science of nutrition. The science of nutrition is less than 200 years old, so it's still a new science. We are learning new things every day.
So it's evolving. It's ever changing
with the research. Yes. And the professionals that specialize in the study of nutrition would be considered nutritionists. And if you're looking for a nutritionist, you would want to look for somebody that is licensed as either a licensed dietitian in the state of Illinois or as a registered dietitian. And those credentials, similar to a registered nurse, assure you that they have had the background, the training, and have passed board exams in the study of the science of nutrition.
Now let's take it back to you. Now, you are a nutritionist.
Yes.
And you are a nutritionist at the Winchester House, which is a skilled nursing facility, right?
Yes.
All right. So what is your job there?
Okay. Well, I'm first of all a registered licensed dietitian, and my job there is to oversee all aspects of the nutrition and food service department. So I'm in charge of writing the special menus, the therapeutic menus for residents that might have particular diseases, might have to follow low salt or low sugar diets. I also manage the procurement of the food. I do all the orders of all the food products that we buy. And then we have a clinical dietitian and a diet technician who oversee the clinical care of the residents.
What does that mean? First of all, what is the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist?
Those terms are used interchangeably.
Okay.
Nutritionist, anyone can call themselves a nutritionist. Okay. Which is why I was saying if you were looking for advice, you want to look to someone who's licensed or registered. So the term nutritionist is used very loosely. You might go to the health food store, and the owner of the health food store might claim that he or she is a nutritionist.
Okay.
Yeah, but you want somebody who has studied and who is actually registered and passed board exam and licensed. Correct.
Licensed.
That is correct.
Not just using it as a title. Without the background of it.
That is correct.
All right, so you have to do a little investigating as far as that concerned. Don't believe in everything that you hear or everything that you read. You have to be an advocate for yourself. That's most important. I have found that out.
And check your sources.
Right.
Yeah, check the sources.
Right. Okay. All right. So you have really evolved and you're learning new things all the time. Okay, so bring us the latest thing that you were we were talking before the show that you discovered this book. We want to know a little bit about that.
Well, as you said, Vita, things change all the time.
Okay.
And when I started out as a dietitian 30 years ago, everything is turned on its head because of research and all the things that we have found out about those building blocks of food. So everything changes, and I would not be surprised in the next 20 years if just as much changes. But what I find really interesting is that there is a lot of wisdom in the old wives' tales that we've heard. And
from our grandparents.
From our grandmother and our great-grandma. And I was actually listening to public broadcasting over the weekend and heard an interview with the author of this book. The book is called Food Rules, and it's an eater's manual, and the author is a gentleman by the name of Michael Pollan. And I was very intrigued. I went out and
I just want to mention this book happens to come in paperback, and she said she bought it at Barnes & Noble. And so it looks like a relatively inexpensive. We're not plugging the book, but we just want to tell you what all the sources of things, where the information is coming from.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And basically, he goes through a bunch of traditional wisdom of eating, and it turns out that a lot of the traditional wisdom that our parents...
Well, just give us a little example.
Well, for example, is perhaps your grandma or your great-grandma told you to eat your colors.
Eat your colors. That's so interesting.
And that,
I remember I heard that from mostly my grandmother and my mother.
And what that referred to was eating all of your colored vegetables, whether it was red or green or orange or yellow. And although it was an old wives' tale, what we've come to find out is that it is those fruits and vegetables that are the source of many of what we call phytochemicals and antioxidants that are really important in the prevention of disease.
I know I've had it told me, don't eat a lot of white. That refers to white flour, white sugar, are things that are white. White potatoes, don't eat a lot of white. So I eat brown rice. I tend to eat more sweet potatoes than white potatoes. And
well, that's a good rule to follow, and that's actually one of the rules that he talks about in here. The point is that in this country, in the Western world, our diet has evolved to using very processed foods. And when you look at the disease processes, or the diseases that are common in this country, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, those can all be traced directly to the nutrients that we're eating.
Well, we're going to go into the depth of that, but at this time, I'm going to come up with my little commentary on Vita's Pearls of Wisdom. All right, now what I'm going to talk to you about today is any of the viewers that have watched me for any length of time know that I am a diabetic. I have been a diabetic since 1984. And the longer that I live comfortably with, I own it. It's my diabetes. It isn't my doctor's. It isn't my friends. It's mine. So I have to pay attention to it, of how I maintain it. So the longer that I own it and maintain it, the simpler I try to get it down to. And I have found one of the principles that I am evolving to maintain at a higher and higher level is to not eat as many processed foods, to keep it simple, to eat like Joyce was telling us, a variety of colors, to have my protein, have my vegetable, and have my fruit, and not to go too much to one side or the other, like not eat too much fruit, because even though those are things of natural sugars, you can overdo that, to eat just, a portion of fruit, a portion of vegetables, a portion of protein, and to eat the right kind of non-processed snacks. That's a big thing. Now, one of the things that I have found that it's easier, as I age, I make lists for everything. And I make a list when I go to the store, because I find if I have the right things available in my house or my pantry, it's easier for me to stay on the zone, get in the just the way that it's good for me to eat. It's more than cosmetics, to stay healthy and to maintain a proper balance. And the proper balance is in my nutrition and what my bowel movements are, because that's an important part of it. Because if I get to the place that I have diarrhea, I'm not eating right, or if I'm constipated, I'm not eating right. So I have to keep myself, my whole system balanced. And I find that comes from not only eating the right kind of food, the right portion of food, and that, I don't get myself down to one meal a day, that I have a breakfast, lunch, and a dinner, and snacks in between. And it's in that balancing act of keeping it simple, and it's like Joyce and I were talking beforehand, instead of opening up a bag of things, just to make myself some popcorn, or just have like a half an orange or a half a banana. I don't have to have a whole banana, or just eating like that, or just eating whole wheat or rye bread. I try to avoid just plain white bread. But let's get back to what she has found that has been so helpful and helped her in her work and in dealing with people that she's in the process of teaching people about, and I think it's really important, about the rules of food. Okay.
Well, that was interesting to hear you talk and refer to some of the basic concepts, of healthy eating, which is get back to as little processed foods as you can, using the whole grains and unprocessed. One of the things Mr. Pollan talks about, for example, breakfast cereal. If your cold cereal changes the color of the milk, that's a good sign that there's too much chemical additives and sugar and things. So go back to a cereal that doesn't change the color of your milk, whether it's hot cereal or there's a number of good cold cereals that are very good. Another tip, don't eat anything that's got the word sugar in the first 3 ingredients, whether it's regular white sugar, cane sugar, high fructose corn syrup, beet sugar. Sugar is sugar is sugar. And if it's in the top 3 ingredients, it's probably the best bet to try to stay away. You mentioned snacks, some great snack ideas. How about this? You can eat as many snacks as you want as long as you're willing to make your own snacks. So instead of grabbing a candy bar that somebody else made, take a piece of fresh fruit. If you're hungry, and you're hungry enough to eat an apple, that's a good thing. But if you don't feel like eating an apple, then you're not really hungry, right?
Right.
So that's something to think about. But fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, all great idea for snacks. Some of the other things that I want to talk about too is back to the fruits and vegetables. It is such a great thing that in our local communities we have the farmers markets. And I was delighted when I came onto the set and I saw one of the ladies had her fresh produce bag here. And she shops at the Fresh Produce Mart. That's a wonderful thing. Get back to as much natural as you can, with your fruits and your vegetables, your whole grains, whatever grain it is, whole grain, not processed. Vita, you're absolutely right. White bread, try to stay away from that. Try to go with whole grain products. There's a very interesting Chinese proverb that I'd like to share. And the proverb is advice on how to live a long and healthy life. And that proverb says that it's better to eat what stands on one leg. Better to eat that than what stands on 2 legs. And even that is better to eat than what stands on 4 legs.
Well, you have to explain this to us.
Okay, so something that stands on 1 leg would be a plant or a grain. A plant or a grain.
A plant or a grain. That's
so
1 leg.
That's very healthy.
That's a stem. Okay.
Anything that grows on a stem.
Okay.
Something that grows on 2 legs would be poultry.
Poultry.
Yes, and
that
then
would be like chicken,
turkey,
mm-hmm.
and then
duck.
Well, that's true too. And then that's better than something that's on 4 legs, which would be beef, pork, veal, those kinds of things. And the Chinese proverb, and of course the Chinese diet, is based very heavily on whole grains and on lots of fruits and lots of vegetables. And in the Chinese and the Eastern diets, they actually use meat more as a flavoring or as an addition to their dishes. So
I know in Europe, their portion of the meat thing is like half what Americans are. Americans like portion like some steakhouses they serve like a 2-pound steak.
And the plates are getting to be this big.
Huge.
We need to go to smaller plates.
A smaller plate, right. Because the portion control
is so important. Also in Europe and other parts of the world, they do a lot more walking and a lot more exercise. And in this country, we rely on usually motorized vehicles.
Yeah,
our car, so we don't maybe get as much exercise as we should. One of the interesting things Mr. Pollan said was, of course, food is the fuel that your body runs on. And he says it's probably not a good idea to buy your fuel at the same place that you buy the fuel for your car. Meaning, don't buy the junk foods at the gas station, is what he's saying. So that's a good point. So getting back to as unprocessed, real food as possible. And the good news is that if we can do that and make some of those changes, we can dramatically lower our rate of disease, which is really exciting. You know, in China and in the Mediterranean, Japan, they don't have the same rates of diabetes or heart disease that we have in this country. And it is really felt that it's the role of diet, you know, plays a huge role in both preventing disease, but also if we're eating a poor diet that's high in fat and sugar and processed foods, that can actually, you know, be a risk factor in the development of those diseases.
Well, you said something as we were talking earlier that struck me and got me to thinking, and it was about if your food comes through a car window. Would you tell our audience that?
Right. Now, as a dietitian, as a nutritionist, I'll be the first to say that any food is fine in moderation.
All right.
Okay, or as a special treat.
Okay.
But if you're getting your meals through the window of your car every day, that is not a healthy diet.
That's not acceptable. That's all processed fast food, right?
That someone else has salted, that someone else has put the condiments on, someone else has fried. And so, you know, while once in a while that's an okay treat, to be relying on that daily is not considered healthy.
Right. If it comes through the car window. Now, I know you said that you have been the nutritionist at the Winchester House for, is it 23 years? 23
years.
That's a long time. Now, what have you learned in that process that has, evolved, changed? What is one of the things that you have learned in that?
Well,
what people are looking for, or what?
Well, now remember, I'm dealing with a population that has got
multitude
of problems, right?
Okay.
And what I've learned from many of my residents is that food has to taste good, number one. And it doesn't matter if it has to be pureed or if it has to be soft. There are still ways, or if it can be regular, there are still ways to have very healthy food, you know, in a variety of methods. I'll give you an example. I have one lady that I'm working with right now. She's trying to lose some weight. And I said to her, well, how about if we send you an apple for a snack every night? And she says, no, I can't chew an apple. Okay, well, the easiest solution to that is to pop it in the microwave and cook it and have a baked apple, which she could have and would be far healthier for her than having cookies or ice cream or something else like that. So what I've learned is to take natural, unprocessed food.
Well, I just want to stop you right here because you just said pop it in the microwave. So here's an opportunity for us to give a tip. Like if you pop an apple in, do you have to peel it?
No, you don't have to peel it, but what you do have to do is you should core it.
You should core it.
Right.
All right. Now, coring means you don't have to have an implement to core. You could just take a knife, and that is to cut the seeds out, right?
Or what you could do is you could quarter your apple first.
Slice it.
And then just slice the seeds out.
Okay.
Okay. And then I would put it in the microwave for, depending on the variety of apple. Some apples are naturally softer than others, for about a minute. And be really careful that you test the temperature and don't burn yourself trying to eat something that might be too hot.
Because I just want our audience to know how to do it. Okay?
Right. Well, and it's interesting because we talked earlier about how the human being is genetically engineered to prefer salt, sugar, and fat. That's how we're born, from cavemen to present. And the food manufacturers, of course, prey on that by adding lots of sugar, lots of salt, and lots of fat to the foods to make them taste good to us. So I think it's really important. There's nothing wrong with eating sweets, but we should try to find our sweets as nature made them. Strawberries, apples, fruit. Have you ever had an ear of corn that was as sweet as sugar?
Right.
Yeah, and that's natural. So to find our snacks as nature made them sweet is a great thing.
Right. I know you said, like, even a little baby, you just take a little sugar water and put it on their tongue, and they just love that.
They do, and that's just something about human beings, that we evolved that way. So, but nothing wrong with sugar if it's in the form that nature provided, in the form of fruits and vegetables.
Well, you know, we live in a very complex society, and we have things that are coming at us from all sides. So I think that one of the things that you're saying is to simplify it and get back to the wisdom of just unprocessed.
Right, and trying to get to whole foods, whether they're at the produce market, whether they're at the grocery market, whether they're at the farmer's market. And one of the food rules that Mr. Pollan talks about is that if your great-grandmother couldn't recognize what it is, don't eat it. For example, you know, a candy bar or other things that are highly processed.
The highly processed.
The highly processed things.
All right. Now, you have been in this line of work for a long time.
Yes, I have.
Now, what is the gratification, what is the passion that you get out of it that it keeps you going and keeps you enthusiastic? Because you're a very enthusiastic person.
Thank you. Well, I like learning. And as I said earlier, the science of nutrition is very new. And we're learning things every single day about those basic nutrients in the food. And 30 years ago, we didn't know what we know today. And it makes me chuckle to think years ago, the old wives' tales we used to throw out the window and say, oh, well, that's not true. Now we're finding out that some of the wisdom of our grandmothers was right on.
And so that's what keeps you going, is the discovery of things.
Yes.
Oh, that's really good. Now, I know if you, well, it's time, we'll have to have you back again. I guess that's all there's to it, because you know what time it is now. When you come to the end of your rope, and you come to the end of your rope, what do? You tie a knot and you hang out.
Hang on. Because
the best is yet to come, and what we want you all to do this week is catch the spirit.
Thank you.
Goes by so fast.
Rita, I think we could sit here and talk for 3 hours.
Yeah, we can. It's just easy. See?
It is. Well, you're an easy person to talk to.
You are too.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Make it easy. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a great book.
I want to get that.
You know what? You can give me this book, and I'll let you read it.
Oh, great.
And here's another thing. These were, oh, I'm sorry, thanks.